Hello, hello, hello. I'm seeing everybody pop in. All right. I'm going to give it 1 minute, then kick things off. I don't know about you all, but the DJ had me moving, so I'm wide awake. Although I'm in Eastern time zone, it's about noon for me here. Welcome, welcome, welcome. All right. I think we have a quorum at this point, so I'm going to kick things off. And let me start by sharing. All right. Awesome. Well, welcome everybody. Hello, hola, bonjour, bonsoir, salam from all across the world. And thank you for joining me here today at World Strategy Day 2022. My name is Grimt Habtemariam, and I'm currently the Director of Global Routes to Market Acceleration at Cisco. So, I've taken the many lessons learned along my 15 plus years career in large high tech, startup, and consulting on how to create, incubate, scale, and execute sustainable growth strategies and distilled it into 4 building blocks. So, over the next 10 minutes, I will cover the 4 critical foundational elements of any sustainable growth strategy. And if you stick to the end, then I'll share with you a practical framework I've leveraged and tweaked along the years to build and execute sustainable growth strategies. And also, excuse me, save some time at the end to take your questions live. So if you have questions and I'm going through this, please pop them in the Q&A tab on the right. Also, under the resources tab, there are some resources that are available and mapped to the framework that I'll be sharing with you. So leverage that as well. And let's get started. Let me get to my screen so I can move you. All right. The first foundational element of a sustainable growth strategy is agility. When we often talk about agility, we think about the ability to adapt to continuous changing market shifts and its impact on product, portfolio, our total addressable market, and our projected market share. A good example of that would be what we saw with Spotify recently over the pandemic. So, what happened over the pandemic? Advertisers had a huge cut in their spending budget. And Spotify's business model heavily relies on advertising income for its survival. So, what did Spotify do? Spotify quickly pivoted to offer original content in the form of podcasts. These podcasts allow Spotify to expand its target audience and, of course, attract new users to its platform. Plus, the podcast allowed advertisement to be embedded into the content. So that meant more views, more eyes on these ads. So it was a win-win-win approach. We're going to have to wait and see to see how it works out for them in the long run. But agility does not just stem from a shift in our market dynamic. It can also come from a shift in organizational structure, strategy, in our talent strategy, operational strategy, or any element of a business go-to market. As an example, during the pandemic, many grocery stores were faced with a shortage of in-store workers and a shift of their customer base to online shopping. Many of them, including Whole Foods and Kroger, quickly pivoted and they turned some of their retail locations into dark locations and they started using them as fulfillment centers. And if we look at the past decade in the tech industry, one of the biggest innovations in tech industry was actually not a tech innovation. It was the rise of consumption-based economics, which led to the rise of cloud, which was a business model and a go-to-market model innovation. It was a shift away from a widely accepted risk model and traditional routes to market. And only then did technology come into play to support and build on that business model and expand from it. So, the need to adapt and innovate extends to all functional areas: sales, operation, product, legal, etc. It boils to three things: identifying and capturing opportunity, identifying and addressing gaps, and innovating or leveraging emerging innovations across all functions. And that leads us to the second foundational element of sustainable growth strategy, which is bias for action. So, what do I mean when I say bias for action? Well, it's an acknowledgement that speed matters in business. It's embracing calculated risk taking built on an understanding that many decisions, as well as many actions, can actually be reversed. They are reversible. The pandemic certainly has provided us with many examples of the need for timely and decisive action in business. But history has also provided us many examples of companies that failed to act in a timely manner, and it kind of didn't turn out very well. Example of Xerox with the photocopier, or Motorola with mobile phones, or Sun Microsystems with Java programming language. And one of my favorite examples to illustrate this point, that's that of Kodak. Kodak's slow reaction to digital photography took it from dominating the market at like 90% market share in the early 1990s to filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy by 2012. So, of course, we have to acknowledge that navigating external disruption is not comfortable, but disrupting ourselves, that's even less comfortable. It requires bias for action, but it also requires a very high level of adaptability. And that leads us to the third foundational element of sustainable growth strategy, which is adaptability. So, what do I mean by adaptability? Well, it's the management of the push and pull effect between commitment and the need for change. It is the careful balance between the need for stability and the need for rapid, accelerated change. We have to acknowledge that disjointed, misaligned, rapid sets of changes can be chaotic. Yes, they can, and actually counterproductive. But a well-orchestrated sets of changes aligned to driving a common goal, that's magic. That's what moves the ball forward in the right direction. That's what makes complex transformations possible. But all of these foundational elements of a sustainable growth strategy that I have covered thus far would not be possible without the fourth one, which is organizational culture. Culture is the one driver and enabler of sustainable growth. It's an element upon which all foundational elements stand on. I'll give you an example. You can build a 50-floor high-rise on a foundation that was designed and poured to support 100 floors, but the reverse is not true. You cannot stand a 100-floor high-rise on a foundation that was designed and poured to only support 50 floors. So, in order to enable the ideation, the collaboration, and the resilience required to build and execute a sustainable growth strategy must be supported by the right organizational culture. A culture that ensures and cultivates psychological safety, that enables and nurtures creative freedom, that prioritizes continuous learning, improvement, and of course, innovation. By this point, you may be thinking, how did pieces of the puzzle come together? Well, here's one way. This framework that I'm about to share with you is one that I have adopted from my learnings and modified over the years, over the course of my career, based on learnings on the ground. It starts with identifying gaps and opportunities, designing a strategy to capture the identified opportunities as well as address the identified gaps, creating clarity around the why and the target desired outcome, alignment of internal and external stakeholders around the why and the desired target outcome, and the how, as well as the resources needed to make it a reality and ensure success. An agreement on what will be the measure of success, as well as what will be the measure of progress. And then finally, leading to successful execution. But of course, all of this is only possible with the right organizational culture, one that makes it safe to fail, empowers each employee, and fosters collaboration. All right. So, in closing, I want to leave you with one thought. How do you view the world? Do you view the world as full of opportunities, where new opportunities are continuously being created, or one with finite opportunities and finite resources, and where you have to fight to secure your fair share? Everything starts with self, and how you view the world shapes how you operate in it as a member of the human race, as a business leader, and definitely as a strategist. So I hope that you have gotten some value out of the talk and the time that we spent together. And now I'm going to pause and see if you have any questions for me that I can address live. So let me go to that window. Oh, all right. So one of the questions that you have for me is, would there be an example of a company with great organizational culture? Where I would be amiss if I didn't mention that the company that I actually work for, which is Cisco, actually has a great culture, a culture that is based on a foundation and a purpose, which is highly purpose driven company where all of the elements that I mentioned actually come to life. It's probably one of the best cultures that I've experienced across all the companies that I have worked for thus far. And it's driven in purpose. It's in a belief of empowering every employee and creating the space for cognitive freedom as well as freedom of expression, where hierarchy does not truly is the guiding principle of how we operate, but on truly a culture that is very much embracing of cross-company, cross-functional, and cross-hierarchy collaboration. So I'll take next one. Which step do most organizations fail at the most? Well, of course, I think I beat the drum that culture is foundational. But beyond that, if we get past that, because that's critical, nothing else will work without that. I would say that based on my experience, the biggest one is alignment. Alignment on why we're doing what we're doing, alignment on what success looks like, alignment on how we're going to measure ourselves, alignment what each party, each stakeholder is going to bring to the table to be able to make what everybody's signing up for collectively a success. So outside of culture, I would say alignment is probably one of the critical steps that without that truly puts at risk the success of any growth strategy. Next question. Can you say more about the difference between agility and adaptability? Yes, absolutely. So, one is the ability to be able to react, right? Either based on what is happening toward you or your observation of where the world and the market is moving toward and being able to transform yourself, right, to that. And the adaptability requires resilience. I would say that one of the key things that makes adaptability possible in any organization is the ability for resilience. And that resilience heavily relies also on, I'm going to continue to harp on that culture, right? A culture of it's safe to fail, it's safe to innovate. You can quickly learn and change and pivot. I'm a huge fan of incubating before scaling. And so all of that kind of balances that agility, which is the need to shift, with the adaptability to be able to be resilient and be able to create your own opportunity, but also see the opportunity and change with the world as the world is changing. And I'll take one last question. I'm told that I cannot take only one more question because of our time. And that is, what are the main steps to move from bureaucratic and rigid orgs to agility? I think it starts, that question truly is, it has to be a cultural shift. It's in the belief that every employee, every individual brings value to the organization, no matter where they are in the hierarchy or which functional areas they are in, and that all functions and all levels of the organization have something to contribute to the larger goal, and that the bringing of that together is what's going to move forward that ultimate success for the organization. So it comes in that deep belief of that and the value of what every individual has to contribute. And I think that has to radiate through the culture, has to radiate through daily action within the organization. And it has to create space of a safety to fail, but also embracing of collaboration across hierarchical lines as well as functions. Thank you. Well, I think this brings us to the end. I enjoyed my time with you, and I wish you a great rest of the day or the evening wherever you are in the world, and stick around for many more great sessions to come as part of World Strategy Day 2022. And I'm pumped, and I'll be attending the other sessions as well.